Let me tell you a story. Back in the old days, before Gods Unchained existed, the ancient times, if you will, there was a little trading card game called Hearthstone. Maybe you've heard of it. Now, Hearthstone was a huge hit, and I remember that at the time, a ton of Twitch streamers basically got huge off of Hearthstone. People who didn't have much of an audience before, maybe they were streaming to, 10 people, 100 people. When Hearthstone came out, some of these people, they blew up and they were streaming to thousands and thousands of viewers. There's a lot of professional streamers today who got their start in Hearthstone, and for good reason, because the base set of Hearthstone at the time was a very fresh and very exciting take on trading card games. It's hard to imagine this now, but at the time of Hearthstone's launch, it was the first time someone got digital trading card games right. Before then, you had Magic and you had other stuff like that, but these physical trading card games weren't really translating into the digital space. Magic is incredibly deep, incredible game, but it's a little bit tricky to play it online. People do it, but it's not really optimal for a digital gaming experience. Hearthstone really figured out how to maintain some depth of the strategy, but streamline the play experience and just get that digital TCG thing to be awesome. However, after base set launched and after a bunch of these content creators experienced success, there was a content drought. There was a point over a year long, I think it was like 15 months, where there were no new cards added to the game. This was absolutely brutal for the creators and the players in general who really enjoyed Hearthstone but were watching the game slowly go stale. I remember at the end of this 15-month stretch, creators were burnt out like crazy. And I was just a spectator. I was not a streamer yet. I wasn't working in gaming yet the way I now work in the industry. Back then, I was just watching, having fun, and even I could see it super obvious. Like, dude, these streamers are dying. They're so bored because they just played the game so much and there was nothing new for so long. Now, Hearthstone did ultimately get a sort of second golden era when they finally dropped a set called Nax Ramis based on the World of Warcraft raid. I don't play that much WoW, but I think Nax is like a big raid in World of Warcraft. They launched a set themed around that since Hearthstone is based on World of Warcraft. It was one of the most hyped sets. It was one of the best sets ever, and it really seemed like it reinvigorated the entire community. So Nax was awesome. And then since then, Hearthstone has kind of lost the zeitgeist. It's still around. A ton of people still play it. It's no longer like the one ultimate thing. For a while, it was really on top, but it's still around. It's still good. I feel like Nax was the last time Hearthstone was like the zeitgeist, the TCG. So the drought didn't kill the game, but it was tough for the content creators, and it definitely at least made everyone hold their breath for a while. Okay, so what does this have to do with Gods Unchained? Flux, I clicked the video, it says Gods Unchained. Okay. Well, it feels like Gods Unchained is in that place that Hearthstone was in the pre-Nax era, in the content drought era. It has been over a year since the last full set for Gods Unchained cards came out. Now, it's not quite as bad as before Nax Ramis, because in Gods Unchained over the last year, we have had two mini sets, Light's Verdict and Winter Wanderlands. So we've had 40 new cards added in the last year. I'm taking a break to drink water, and while I do, make sure you like and subscribe. Stay hydrated, friends. It's not as bad. We've had 40 new cards added in the last year, but it's been over a year since the last full set of cards, since the last time the meta really got shaken up. Even though Gods Unchained's meta is very diverse with a ton of options, it's just getting stale for the people who play every day. I want to be super clear. Gods Unchained's meta in the current set of cards is fucking awesome. Just looking at one of the 6 classes, the Death class alone, you could play aggro and Nubians, you could play aggro or mid-range zombies, you can play board wipe Death, which is pretty expensive, but that's a classic list. You can play Rock Drakes, which is a really freaky aggro where you create a bunch of weak creatures, you sacrifice them, and then you summon these super strong creatures, but you have to have a low health, kind of like an old Hearthstone archetype. What was that? Jiraxis, I think. So you like the Rock Drakes is crazy. That's 4 different, completely different archetypes in one class, And I think all 6 classes in Gods Unchained have something like that. Look at Warrior. You've got Aggro War, which is very affordable. You've got Big Relics War, which has budget versions that are pretty good, and then the cracked version is pretty expensive. And then you have Control War, which is very expensive and is probably the strongest deck in the game. So 3 completely different archetypes for War, 4 for Death, and the list goes on. I can go through all 6 classes. I'm not going to do so. It's a very diverse meta. It's also quite balanced. You see all 6 classes in high-level play at least some of the time. Some classes don't do as well. Feels like, I was going to say Nature isn't doing that well, but Control Nature has been good. I don't know. I mean, honestly, all 6 classes are pretty good. You know, sometimes some kind of get a little bit stronger or weaker, but the balance and the diversity has been absolutely excellent. Total dub for the Gods Unchained design team. I appreciate the chance to enjoy this excellent set of cards. It's just that it's getting stale now. After a year with only 40 new cards, and Light's Verdict, half of those cards, was generally considered to be a bad set. Light's Verdict, the whole community pretty much agrees Light's Verdict was a mistake. So 40 new cards, half of them were kind of bad for the meta. It's been about a year since like a real new set dropped. Even though the current state of the game is an incredibly diverse, fun, interesting meta, it's just going stale and it's time to move on. So that's why I'm hype as hell. How's that for an intro? Let's talk about the actual thing. And this, I'm like facing the wrong way here. I don't know. I'm gonna go down here in this bottom right corner. Hope that works for you. This is the page announcing the new set. So I saw this from the Gods Unchained Twitter. New set, Band of the Wolf, stand together and fight mortals. Join in the mercenary band in the defense of Reneko Village. So they initially teased some lore. There was a Discord channel that had a little bit of stuff about these warriors from Reneko Village. Now today, March 8th, last night, I'm recording this on March 9th. So last night they dropped the announcement. And I really like how they do this. I like how they're leading with the lore. I think these characters, like, you know, TCGs, it's a lot of information. In a good TCG, new content comes at you pretty fast. So having strong characters and lore and storytelling, I think it both gives something to people who aren't the sweatiest players. Not everyone's just like grinding up to Mythic. And it also just gives everyone a chance to sort of take a breath and go, okay, I'm ready. Show me some cards, you know? It's not just like immediately hitting us with the full spoiler list, you know? So I like this. You got a bunch of characters. This, I guess, main character, I mean, she's the one in the graphic, the main graphic. This character kind of reminds me of oh god, I'm blanking on it. Oh my god, Mikasa from Attack on Titan, sort of vibe there. Which is cool. Mikasa is like a super badass character, so maybe Aiko will be as well. Aiko, Undaunted Duelist. We'll just read one of these descriptions. I'm not going to go through all of them. This one says, wolves don't fear the dark. Orphaned at a young age, Aiko fought tooth and nail to survive. Life as a drifter honed her skills, and her tenacity is crucial to the Band of the Wolf's success. Still haunted by her past, she spent her life in search of the man in the lion's armor. That's kind of cringe. I don't know. I always want to do like an announcer voice, but I always end up doing it cringe. I don't know how those guys... Coming soon to a theater near you. I don't think my voice is deep enough. Anyway, Aiko, one of 7 characters. Mikasa vibes from Attack on Titan for sure. I've been watching a lot of anime lately. Anyway, I really like these characters, and if we scroll down, we see there's a story going on. One other thing that I didn't have pulled up yet, let's see, Chris Clay. So this is the game director for Gods Unchained and Guild of Guardians, apparently. I didn't realize he was working on both games. He says, in Gods Unchained's upcoming set, Band of the Wolf, there'll be a new mechanic called Ally. What do you think it'll do? Wrong answers only. Valdez says, when a unit with Ally enters the board, you have to drink a shot of tequila on the house. I'm down, but that means my streams will probably get a little bit shorter. I'm kind of a lightweight. A couple Ally cards, and I'm about to be ready to go to sleep. So we don't know what this Ally mechanic is, but definitely exciting. I mean, so far Gods Unchained has had some really interesting mechanics. I feel like the Empower mechanic is really, really cool. I feel like the Order mechanic is really cool. So I'm interested to see what ally is going to be. So I'm not going to speculate too much on what the new characters are going to be. What are their cards going to be like? I could sit here and say, okay, this character is a warrior, so it's probably going to have a high strength stat. I don't want to like try to speculate. That would be fun, but super inaccurate. Instead, let me take a few minutes to talk about what I think a lot of Gods Unchained's community is hoping for. I stream Gods Unchained about 20 hours a week over on the Twitch channel, link in the description. I talk to a lot of people in the chat about what cards they think are broken, what would make the meta better. Here's a few things I've noticed seem to be, these are some things that a lot of people seem to think. The number one thing that people tell me when we talk about Gods Unchained meta is that they want more counterplay against the hidden mechanic. Cards in Gods Unchained that have hidden are not only untargetable by spells, they're also untargetable by creatures who attack. So you can't attack them, you can't hit them with spells, and that can be very toxic in some situations. You can still hit hidden creatures with AoE spells, so some classes have options to help deal with them. But overall, losing to aggressive hidden decks, especially the Deception class's deck, Hidden Rush as it's known, a very aggressive deck with strength buffs and hidden creatures, it feels really bad to lose a game in 5 turns, and literally you cannot target any of the opponent's creatures. That just feels bad. It's not broken on a statistical level, like the win rate isn't mathematically too high because it does get countered by various things, but it's just a really unpleasant experience for the player to lose against Hidden Rush in a lot of the Hidden Rush games. And I don't think they should go too far, but some kind of strong counterplay against hidden, maybe a neutral card. I'm thinking off the top of my head, like something that's not too crazy, but like a 4 mana card with 2 attack and 2 defense, 2 health, and it says remove hidden from all creatures on the board. Like something like that. Or a spell for 3 that says, you know, all your opponent's creatures lose hidden. Just like something that's like the equivalent of Thawed Heart, which is a card that obliterates the void and basically hard counters Anubian decks. Anubians use void mechanics to do lots of damage. We need something like Thawed Heart, but that specifically counters Hidden Rush. I don't think it will destroy Hidden Rush the same way I don't think Thawed Heart destroyed Anubians. I just think there needs to be something to address the feeling of hopelessness that players get against Hidden Rush. I think Hidden Rush is a little bit too lacking in counterplay. It's a little bit too uninteractive. 2, counterplay against sleep. It is no secret if you play Gods Unchained, if you study it a little bit, there's a card from the Genesis set. It costs $500 or $600 a pop right now in the current market, on the secondary market. It's called Demogorgon. Demogorgon has a very strong effect that puts the opponent's creatures all to sleep for a turn. It's not even all that it does, but the big thing is it puts your opponent's board to sleep for a turn. And this card is, unfortunately, without that card, control decks just aren't very good. Everyone knows Demogorgon is pretty much the strongest card in the game, and specifically it's the sleep mechanic that is super, super devastating about it. So I think some counterplay against sleep is desperately needed just to put Demogorgon in its place. As a Genesis card, Demogorgon cannot be nerfed. I mean, they've promised they'll never nerf it, and they'll never rotate it out. So the only option is we need to standardize having more anti-sleep mechanics, and maybe even anti-leech, since Demogorgon has the combination of sleep and leech. Leech means that whenever it attacks, it heals your god for the amount that it deals damage. It's a lot of stuff, and as long as Demogorgon is going to be this unchanging, unrotating card, the Gods Unchained design team has a duty, in my opinion, to make sure that it is not too strong. Right now, control decks at the high end have a minimum budget of $2,000 plus, and I think that is extremely toxic for the game's community long term. The standard meta should not have a entry barrier of thousands of dollars. Like, it's one thing in a legacy format. You want to go play legacy, shit gets crazy. When we're talking about standard mode in your game where new players join and they want a chance to compete, top decks are going to get somewhat expensive, but they should ultimately, ideally, be measured in the hundreds, not in the thousands. And it's really just not a good thing. It's terrible for the game. If all of control decks as a whole cost thousands of dollars. It's one thing if, okay, Control War is expensive or Control Light is expensive. When all 6 classes are like, you need to spend thousands or else you're at a massive disadvantage, it's so bad for the game. I really hope they'll add some counterplay against Sleep or maybe Leech, but I think Sleep is the big one. Give us something wild. 2 mana, 1/1 creature, remove Sleep from all creatures. Some shit like that. Give us something that's in the neutral set that's somewhat cheap and that removes Sleep from everything. We need a little more anti-Sleep tech, I think, and I think a lot of players feel that way. The whales are going to have to be reasonable. You might have a bunch of Demogorgons. Don't make my cards worse, but we need to also make sure that a lot of people enjoy the game. Otherwise, Demogorgons will lose value because the game will lose relevancy, right? And that sort of leads into my third and final point, which is that we just need anything that makes control affordable. Please, please, my one wish for Gods Unchained is that there will be an affordable control archetype that shows up with this new set. Please, please. My collection is worth a couple $1,000 now, and I still can't play Control. This is absurd. This is absurd. I've been grinding hard, putting in a pretty good amount of money. I'm still completely locked out of Control. So I can only imagine people who are on a tighter budget than me, which is most players, because even I'm putting in, a decent amount of cash trying to keep up. You need to do something about this. It's crazy. And also, by the way, side note, I personally think they should also rotate out some of the old cards as soon as possible. Everyone seems to disagree with me on this one, but I still think so. There's over 1,000 cards in the Gods Unchained standard meta right now, and I think once you have over 1,000 cards, it becomes unfeasible to balance it well. I think the team will need to rotate cards out to make room for new deck ideas and new gameplay experiences, and I think the community will never support this, but I think they just kind of need to do it anyway. It's a bitter pill the community needs to swallow. But what if my cards lose a little bit of value? You need to make room for new cards that will have value. I think they should rotate cards out. I know everyone disagrees. Come at me in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. Damn it, Flux. They shouldn't rotate anything out. You don't understand. If they rotate stuff out, you're going to kill the game. You're going to kill it. Everyone's going to leave. You tell me that I'm wrong. I still think they should rotate cards out. Anyway, are you excited about the new set, Band of the Wolf? I'm pumped. Let me know in the comments. That's it. Flux signing out.